We have so much to cover in this life-changing module. You know, in your journey, if you look back on it, you've probably gone through 3 or 4 seasons where this pattern has been your life experience. And you probably didn't even realize God was using that to set you up for the ultimate assignment. Those 4 stages is God gives you a dream of something you want to do. And then you enter into the dream and immediately you find things aren't working out right. That's the distress process. And then you begin to develop certain unique talents and skills or mindsets. And then you come into a final moment of demonstration, and then that ends. And it's like, boom, you start the process over, and you're in a different job, you're in a different calling. And you haven't had an opportunity yet to look at the blueprint and the pattern of the convergence process. That's the mastery of your destiny, looking at the seasons you've already been through. But in this module, we go a little deeper. We talk about boundary items, and that there are specific moments of historic awakening that you've had regarding who you are and what you're called to do. And those boundary items we need to map out so you could see the trajectory of where they're taking you. This process in your life in the past is leading you to an ultimate convergence where you're demonstrating the work that God has you to do. So much to cover in this module. The emotional intelligence qualities of self-awareness and how to respond during the process so you know what phase you're in, and then how to adapt. All that's going to be covered here. And lancewallnau.com/mastery is where you get the unpacking of all the content. We'll give you a sample of it here. lancewallnau.com/mastery. Pay close attention to the destiny mapping process. You remember our last session, we talked about destiny mapping, doing a timeline of the high points in your life and the low points, and pointing out that your experiences, which are both high and low, are powerful depending on what you believe about them. And during our break between filming, my son came up and pointed out something I'd never seen before, in that your low points may be the most conspicuous areas of contradiction when the enemy showed up, when you were depressed, defeated, to try to embed you with a belief about people, about women, about money, about life, about you, about God. You have to be very careful about that. But then he said something else. He said that the high points can be equally mischievous because they're moments of intense, accelerated breakthrough, but what you believe about them can be important too. And the illustration he used is as the young lady I talked about, Kendra, when she won The Apprentice with Donald Trump as the youngest and first female, she did it by doing her project alone because she couldn't trust other people to support her. If she walks through life believing that her victories are reliant upon God and her, and she's not dependent on anyone else, she could be robbing other people of the ecclesia and teamwork that God has in mind, because she'll push them away because eventually it's just me and God. That's my experience. So you have to be careful about the highs and the lows. And so let's go back and visit this with a fresh piece of paper just so we could see what it looks like. Now, I gave you the life of Joseph, but it could be the life of Lincoln. Makes a great illustration. Winston Churchill is a great illustration. It's not just this process, and these materials don't work just for Christians. This is called life. And you'll find that when someone gets saved, guess what? God was at work in their life before they got saved. God just didn't get interested in them when they got born again. He was shaping their life before they got saved. So that, in a sense, redemption is God putting together all the pieces of your life. And lives aren't always like this. Some people's lives are, like that. It's not always a nice, clear image, because you could have 2 or 3 moments that are really peak moments, and then boom, you have a contradiction. So, but I'm showing you how the vicissitudes of life do teach you something when you examine them. But let's go back and look at this a little more closely. Down here, I'm always watching at the low moments, because I find for the most part that the most mischievous beliefs that are formed regarding identity, regarding global belief systems, about people, and about life in general, are formed during these moments of intense pain. If I was to say to you, do you remember where you went out to the last restaurant and had dinner and who you were with, you'd have to wrestle with it. But if it's weird, if I go back to some trauma memory that's a historic trauma point, almost everybody can, if you're old enough, you remember, where were you when the space shuttle blew up? You know what, were you in class? Did you hear about it? People kind of like their memories are etched easy with negative and positives don't grip. So it's one of the reasons why I want to see what are the beliefs that you're forming during these low points. We call them oogle, ungodly beliefs, or oogle boogles. And the oogle boogles is that when you hit those moments, if the devil can repeat the pattern, then that same belief will get triggered again later. So, I'm not good at this, I'm not good at that. Anytime you say to yourself you're not good at something, if you've had negative experiences, well, guess what? When the pressure comes for you to perform over here and that belief pulls up over here, you'll actually move towards confirming what you believe. And you repeat the pattern you were trying to get out of. What is the remedy to an oogle or an ungodly belief? What is the remedy to a lie? Well, it's kind of interesting. Because if it's the truth that sets you free, then it's a lie that holds you captive. For a lot of people, the solution to the lie is to simply establish what the truth is. And so clearly, when you're in touch with what you're experiencing in a moment of, I'll put it to you this way, sometimes you don't know what you're saying to yourself. It would be nice if everybody had that kind of cosmic awareness all the time. But my experience and the experience of and the research that we've looked at is that there's this, you literally are like a behavioral iceberg, that up above here, you have awareness of what's going on. But below the surface, here, you have the unconscious of what's going on. Down below the surface, you're actually experiencing feelings all the time. Your feelings actually are a better indicator of what you're saying to yourself than what you're consciously aware of. I mean, have you ever been with somebody who is, they're upset, but if you ask, this is a husband and wife story all the time. Oh, what's the matter? Nothing. Well, something's the matter, but they're saying nothing. No, really, what's the matter? Nothing. And I'm telling you, women are complicated this way. It's because this typically is the guy's trying to figure out how to fix something, and the woman is a little bit more complex, and she's experiencing, it could be a day-old issue with my marriage. I can only talk about my marriage. My wife will eventually tell me what I did, but what I did didn't just happen now. It happened a lot earlier, and I was totally missing all the clues. All the slam doors, and I'm not with you, and I'm not happy because I'm self-absorbed doing what I'm doing, and all of a sudden I finally pick up, and it's like, what's wrong? Nothing. I know something's wrong. The fact of the matter is, down here in the realm of feelings, you've got a lot going on. You have very low awareness. Maybe you have 10% awareness, 90% down here. But let me just suggest to you, part of the genius of self-awareness in terms of your EQ skills is that you could always go down here. If you're feeling depressed, if you're feeling agitated, if you're feeling anxious, the probability is you're having a conversation with yourself and you're not even aware you're having it. But you can always tell what you're having by the state that you're in. Your state reveals your dialogue. Your state reveals your dialogue. Do you ever get the feeling that you're kind of stuck? You're not seeing the pieces come together. We look at transformation as though it's an event. It's actually a sequence of events. It's a journey that you're on. LanceWallnau.com/mastery is a 7-part series of the 40 years of the most important insights I've seen work in the lives of successful entrepreneurs and people of high impact. I want you to get a hold of the entire 7 modules, LanceWallnau.com/mastery. You'll be glad you did it. It's like grabbing a rat by the tail. I can't tell what's going on here, but I pull that feeling out and examine it, and I go, where is this anxiety coming from? Well, the anxiety is coming from what I'm saying to myself in the moment. And of course, if you've been with me long enough, you know that you're thinking at the rate of 1,200 words per minute. That means you're thinking, your self-talk is going on very fast. You're not talking slowly. You're zip, zip, zip. You're thinking in chunks, which is when you have to that's why when you get a revelation, have you ever had a revelation from God and you write it down, or you're having an aha? It takes you a whole half hour to teach what you got, it's like the Matrix. You plug yourself in, and I know Kung Fu. You get more thought down here, and it takes you an hour to unpack what you got in a moment of revelation. Well, that's the way this works. Your self-talk is moving very fast. You're not quite sure what's going on, but your self-talk is actually revolving around here, and you're only picking up on 10% of it. Nothing's the matter. I'm fine. I'm just tired. I got to get something to eat. I need to get some. You rationalize what it is. But if someone else can get down to the heart of the matter, you'll find out there's more going on. I'm suggesting to you that when you are in moments when you're in a disempowered state, ask yourself, what am I feeling? And then ask, what am I saying to myself that corresponds with that feeling? And more often than not, you'll realize that you're more in agreement with a lie than with the truth. And so the way that we frequently break out of this is people will put into language, what's the worst, if you were to capsulize this and really put it into a sentence, what's the devil saying to you at the low point? What's the lie? If you can articulate the lie, you can then say, what's the truth? And what we do with our people is we have them say what the lies and then say, what's the truth about that? Because the truth is more powerful than a lie, providing you've articulated the lie clearly. Now, what makes this especially interesting is, now, for instance, with people that are dealing with diseases, one of the curious discoveries that some healing ministries made is that when people are dealing with diseases, frequently the fear associated with the disease and the diagnosis is worse than anything else because they're dealing with the fear, right? And a strange thing happened. I don't know if it was Andrew Wallnau or if it was someone else with a great healing ministry. They said that they actually found that when people started like reading books about heaven and about the next life, the afterlife, and these testimony books, that it created such an interest and a fascination and in a sense a longing to be able to go there, that the fear and anxiety associated with the unnaturalness of death itself was broken and the healing was faster to manifest. Because as long as you're fighting through the anxiety of the pain or the separation or the struggle or the what if I die or what happens, once you move past that into the joy that's set before you, you can endure the contradiction you're going through. And it makes healing even faster when you're looking at the next life right now. It's like, yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It's like, well, can't go yet. Come back. So the idea that there's this internal dialogue that is happening could be happening, as we pointed out, at the high point. Most destructively, I think, it's happening at the low points because at these points, you may not be aware of what you're saying to yourself. That's the nature of how the devil is. He likes to molest you at a young age. He wants to destroy the child like the dragon in Revelation 12 as soon as it's born. But I'll give you a moment in the life of Jesus. I referred to it earlier. I regret that I didn't go to the Bible and read it to you. But let's go back to Jesus with the Greeks at the feast. He exposes his internal dialogue. He exposes his self-talk to his disciples. Because Jesus had 100% self-awareness of what was going on. Remember when the crowd's around him and they're pressing on him and pulling on him? And one woman reaches out in the midst of them, grabs hold of the hem of his garment, and zap, virtue goes out of him. He stops and he looks. He says, I perceive virtue went out of me. Now, with a whole mob around you, you would think that you would be distracted enough to not notice till you got back to the car, the limo, or your house, what happened. But he knew the moment the juice was being pulled out of him, who did it. And then he's looking, he didn't know who it was, but he'd find them. He's looking to see who's the most likely. You are the one. And that was the woman that she comes before him. How did he know that? I remember when I watched Catherine Kuhlman after the miracle service, and the crowds of people would be around her. And she had these 12 bodyguards and guys who were around her locking their arms like this so she could move through the crowd. And someone leaned over to me and said, now you see what the disciples did with Jesus? They were his entourage. They were his bodyguard team. And their job was basically to be assigned to the Messiah. And so you see them, so when Jesus says, who touched me? It's Peter that says, what do you mean, who touched you, man? They were surrounding him, and the crowd was just hard to work with because they were all wanting to touch him. And they're holding him back, and one lady got through. So in a sense, how did Jesus know? Because he was totally aware, remarkably, aware of what was happening in him and aware of what was happening in you at the same time. And that must be possible to do because he didn't do his ministry as God, he did it as a man. So check out what happens here. Now in chapter 12, it says in verse 20, there were certain Greeks that were coming up to worship in the feast, and they came to Philip, who was from Bethsaida of Galilee, and they asked him, saying, Sir, we want to see Jesus. So Philip told Andrew, and Andrew and Philip went and told Jesus, hey, there are Greeks here, man. They're coming they want to talk to you from Greece. But Jesus answered them, The hour has come. So that's what I told you. He knew the moment the Gentile nations were coming to him that he had finished his mission. Israel is so saturated, now the other nations are going to start hearing about his ministry, but he's not sent to them. That means he's done his job. The advertising's done. The hour has come that the Son of Man should be glorified. And I like the fact that he doesn't refer to himself here as crucified. His focus was on what? The outcome, not the process. So he looked at his death as a glorify. So he says, now the hour has come when the Son of Man should be not betrayed, not murdered, not left alone, and not sweat blood, but glorified. Most assuredly, I say to you, unless a grain of wheat falls into the ground and dies, it remains alone. But if it dies, it produces much grain. Then he breaks it down. If you love your life, you'll lose it. But if you hate your life in this world, you're going to keep it for eternity. Then he says this. I want you to think about the real secret to cosmic favor. He reveals it. And this is a Leadership University verse. If anyone wants to serve me, let him follow me. And where I am right now, there my servant will be also. And if anyone serves me, him my Father will honor. So break that down. Jesus is saying, a leader follows the Lamb whithersoever he goes. If you're really a leader, you're going where other people follow. That means you're not following where someone else is leading. That means that you are initiating motion and movement in a direction that you're pioneering that other people will follow. If God is there, you'll join him where he is. The likelihood is, if he's there and you're joining him where he is, then you're serving him in a place that other people will be following behind. You're pioneering. This is apostolic and prophetic ministry. You're going to where the Spirit is active and you're joining Jesus in what he's doing. But it may not be a comfortable adjustment. It may be like Ananias. Go to Straight Street, go to this house, and go pray for Saul. Well, everything sounded good till I found out you want me to pray for Saul, but that's where Jesus was. He had to go to Saul and pray for Saul to be where Jesus was. And if you'll go where the Father takes you, that's where the force of favor comes upon you. So him will my Father honor, him will my Father put favor upon. So what's the secret to favor? It's embracing the assignment to go where Jesus is active, where you maybe don't want to go, don't feel excited about going, or maybe other people aren't there yet. Don't wait for the crowd. Join him in what he's doing, and favor will come upon you. So he's taught them the quick lesson on, if you're going to follow me, you're going to be where I am. And sometimes you're going to be right in a moment like this, where you've got to die so that other people can get the benefit. So this is the moment of ultimate self-awareness. Now my soul is troubled. I love what he does here. He literally peels back his internal dialogue for everyone to hear. He says, and you know what? As I'm saying it, the hour's come for me to be glorified, and now my soul is troubled. What's the human experience when you're going through those moments? Is your own soul is troubled. So you shouldn't wonder if there's something wrong with you, if you're not in faith, if you're not in the anointing. Jesus himself had a troubled soul. Now my soul is troubled. But what do I say? Father, save me from this hour. That's what his own soul was saying. Save me, Father. Deliver me, Father. Get me out of this situation. But he said, but that may be what my soul wants to say. But for this purpose I came. So your purpose sanctifies your self-talk. Your purpose clarifies your conflict. Your purpose pulls you through the contradiction of you not wanting to do what you've got to do. But if you'll do what the Father tells you to do, if you'll join the Father where the Father is, then the Father will honor you when you get there. So Jesus says, my soul's troubled, but what am I going to do? What do I say? Father, deliver me, but for this purpose I came. Instead, I'll say this, Father, glorify your name. Then a voice came from heaven. This is so interesting. And a voice came from heaven saying, I have both glorified it and will glorify it again. Now here's the interesting thing. The people who stood by and heard it said that it thundered. Others said an angel spoke. But Jesus says, you know, that voice didn't come because of me, but it came for your sake. Now's the judgment of this world. Now the rule of this world will be cast out. And if I'm lifted up from the earth, I'm going to draw everyone to myself. This line here, the voice didn't come because of me, but for your sake, tells you that in his spirit, he heard the Father say, I have glorified it and I will glorify it again. He heard it internally, but when he heard it audibly, he realized that was for them. But he would have heard the Father say it personally, and except for the scriptures, you'd never know what was going on. But since he's revealing his internal dialogue, the Father revealed what was going on inside of Jesus for you. So he said, what am I going to say? Save myself? That's the reason why I'm here. Then the Father, glorify your name, and the Father says out loud, I have glorified it, and I'm going to do it again. Telling him, I've already glorified it. Nobody's ever done on the earth what you've done. And when you're raised again from the dead, no one will ever top that. That was the Father talking to him about what he's about to do. I worked with a Christian psychoanalyst who was a coach for athletes and for peak performers in business. And he opened up my understanding to that one word we touched on in this module, the deference scale. That's the degree of flexibility you have in learning something new, or the degree of ego attachment you have to being right and everybody else is wrong. That one factor is the difference between a $2 million vision, a $20 million vision, as we found out, a $100 million vision. But none of that makes a difference if you're not open right now to learning the content and the insights that can give you, shall we say, the edge, the believer's edge in being able to navigate the moment that you're in now to get to where you really want to go. That's why this mastery course was designed. It was designed for people just like you. You want to go to lancewallnau.com/mastery and be able to take a look at your own deference scale in your journey in the past and how open you are to the wisdom and humility that God wants you to have to experience a whole new paradigm as you're entering into the next most important season of your life. lancewallnau.com/mastery. You're going to get this and so much more in this course. I encourage you, make the investment in you. You are worth it.
Did you enjoy this latest episode? Please remember to share it with your friends, because the more knowledge you have, the better equipped you are to navigate the world.